Yeah, because that makes sense. I want to talk about a very peculiar era of gaming where a certain console just would not die. A lot of people like to comment how the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii generation just went on for too damn long. I mean, the Xbox 360 basically lasted like 10 years with full-on game support, because the generation before the 360 and PS3, you know, the original Xbox, GameCube, all that stuff, like that pretty much only lasted like 5 years. The GameCube and Xbox launched in 2001 and fundamentally ended around 2006. I mean, the GameCube's last game was The Prophecy, and that released in 2007, just 1 year after the Wii came out. So it's pretty obvious that they were just like, all right, let's get rid of these things. But those consoles' competitor, the PlayStation 2, that console lasted roughly forever. I mean, the PS2 sold over 150 million units. Obviously, if any console was gonna get constant support well past its successor and its successor's launch, I mean, it was always gonna be the PS2. It had such a huge install base, you'd be stupid not to put your game out on it in 2013. No matter how popular some game consoles are, they gotta end at one point or another. I mean, look at the Wii. That thing was almost as popular as the PlayStation 2. I mean, like, everybody owned a Wii, but it didn't keep receiving the amount of support the PS2 was getting. Now, that might be because of, you know, like, times in gaming have changed. I feel like the bigger publishers and developers are kind of putting more quality over quantity. I mean, quality with an asterisk, but, you know, pretty much everybody's putting out less games. You see less frequent entries in a certain series, you know? But back in like 2006, I mean, what? They put out like 10 Sonic games, all on different platforms? And I feel like it was because those platforms were easier to develop for. They were much simpler. So yeah, squirt out a Sonic game or two on the DS, who gives a shit? And that was the key, because I already mentioned the Wii. The Wii was underpowered as all hell. I mean, games looked like trash on that thing most of the time. It was just so much weaker than the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. And Nintendo obviously intentionally did that so they could keep costs down and make it more about the experience rather than just sheer horsepower. So the Wii had more in common with the PlayStation 2 than like the PlayStation 3, which I think benefited Sony here. There were so many games that only came out on Wii and PlayStation 2. Like it would be like a multi-platform game release in like 2008. 2008, like well into the 7th generation. The PS3 was well into its lifespan, so was the Xbox 360. And so many games only came out on Wii and PlayStation 2, and sometimes the PSP. Like Manhunt 2, only on PSP and PS2. What? I mean, the original Manhunt came out on PS2 and Xbox, so I assume maybe, you know, they started work on Manhunt 2 on that hardware, but of course the Xbox died off way sooner. The PS2 was still, you know, readily available and was still fairly popular, and the Wii was releasing, and that had similar hardware to the PS2, so it made it easy to just go like, alright, well, let's just put it out on the Wii as well in addition to the PS2, and why not the PSP, because that's also kind of similar. And in the end, we just have a lot of games in like the 2007 to 2009 range that just have a weird platform list. So like sometimes when they'd make a Wii game, they would just say like, all right, well fine, let's put it out on PS2 as well, because, you know, like, hey, we want to make as much money as possible. So you get a lot of Wii games that really relied on motion control on PS2. Rayman Raving Rabbids also appeared on Xbox 360. What? There's a couple games like that where it's just like, why are you here? It's kind of strange when you think, like, Rayman Raving Rabbids 1 appeared on the Xbox 360, and then 2 came out only on Wii. 3 came out only on Wii. Rabbids Go Home, only on Wii. So it's just like, the series technically kind of started in high definition, but then didn't go back for a while. Like, that would be like on the NES and SNES. Like, let's say Mega Man 1 launched simultaneously on the NES and SNES, and then Mega Man 2 just, you know, the rest of the series just happened on the NES. You know, like, why? It just shows how different the markets were on 360 and PS3 and Wii, and sort of PS2. PS2 kind of felt like just an insurance plan, you know? Like, it's just like, oh, well, if the market for this game isn't on Wii, there you go. I actually compiled a list a while ago. Like, this was just out of just sheer curiosity of me just kind of going through the PS2 catalog. Like, I think I just scrolled through a list of PS2 games, and I just looked at all the games that had a Wii release. This isn't a complete list by any means, but these are just the ones that, that just kind of stuck out to me. One of the big ones that I think most people will recognize is Sonic Unleashed. So yeah, Sonic Unleashed was an Xbox 360 and PS3 game, but they also made a Wii version. And the Wii version was pretty damn different. It's basically a different game, just with the exact same, plot, aesthetics. It's Sonic Unleashed, but it's not. That was because Sonic Unleashed was a pretty demanding game on the 360. They really put their all into that thing. It is still one of the most visually impressive Sonic games, and it came out in 2008. I think that's just because they had an actual budget behind it. They were like, we gotta make this good. We gotta make this impressive, and they did. But it was also releasing on the Wii, and I'm sure just to make sure that they weren't gonna, cut corners on the 360 version by maybe developing for Wii first and then kind of upgrading to 360 later. I think they wanted to make sure the 360 version and PS3 version were the best it could be, so they just hired a different developer, Dimps, to create the Wii version. And it looks similar enough to where an 11-year-old Scott would be like, oh, I'm just playing Sonic Unleashed, wouldn't think any different of it. But obviously comparing the two side to side, they are pretty damn different. But this game also released on the PS2. I think Sega thought it's just damn, if we're making an entirely different version of the game just for the Wii, we might as well put it out on the PS2 just to be safe. It's just really strange for me to see Sonic Unleashed with the PS2 header on a PS2 box, It's something that always just kind of makes me go, huh. They did that with a couple different games. I know Ghostbusters, the video game, that had a similar treatment where the 360 and PS3 versions were kind of their own version, while the Wii and PS2 games were developed by a different developer and had different character designs for all the characters. They were much more cartoony. They looked like, oh, Ghostbusters, the animated series. And I'm sure they did that just because they were like, well, let's not try to be like the 360 and PS3 version. Let's just make our own thing that we know will run on these platforms and just give it a different style. Hey, we're doing something different here, so then it doesn't look super bad downgrading a 360 game, and we're doing something that'll work on these platforms. But I just find it the strangest when you see games that were very much made for the Wii. These are games that I really couldn't imagine on anything but the Wii, but they got PS2 versions. I mean, this is primo Wii shovelware, Dancing with the Stars, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, Make the Grade. These are Wii games to me, but instead Dancing with the Stars uses a dance mat, and Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? I don't know, man. It's just weird for me to see Wii shovelware here. I mean, this is just a Wii game to me. This is a damn Wii game. There's some Wii games I didn't even know got PS2 versions, like Ninja Turtle Smash Up. 2009! 2009! And this only got on Wii and PS2. There's no reason why this shouldn't have been on 360 or PS3, but I guess it was something where they developed on Wii, and they developed only within a certain budget. They were like, no, we're making this game within the budget knowing that this is a Wii game. And then they were like, why not? Sure. Hasbro Family Game Night? Yeah, on PS2 as well. Yeah. Boogie always perplexes me, just because I remember that game near the beginning of the Wii's life. That was 2007. And it was so marketed with the get up and dance. And then it releases on PS2. It uses a karaoke microphone in addition to the motion controls on Wii. So that I understand. I still haven't played Boogie on PS2. I don't know what the hell, how the hell this works. I assume it's just you move the analog sticks. I assume. I'm not sure. Let me see. Shake it, sing it, create it. Shake it? I assume to get past, false advertising claims, they could just be like, oh, no, we're telling you to shake your ass, not your remote. Controls that make you move. Bring your boog to life with intuitive controls that make your boog dance and shake on screen. The music reigns supreme from wrong. Your moves, your dance and sing, and create videos, customize the look of your boog. How do you control this game? I don't know. Am I gonna pop this in to find out? Are you? Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings. that was like a big deal, you know. It was almost like bam, like an original Indiana Jones adventure on video game consoles, and it was just a Wii and PS2 game? What? You know, it came out in 2009, just like a year after like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, so, you know, Indiana Jones was, you know, more in the public eye at the time. So why just limit yourself to putting it out on Wii and PS2? Why? I understand the Wii where it's just like, oh, you want the marketing thing of like, oh, use your Wii remote as the whip, you know, do all that. But it's just like, on PS2, the Simpsons game, that was a big one. That released on damn near every single platform that was current at the time in 2007. And that was always one of my favorite games to just see the difference between all the versions of the games. You know, on the Wii, PS2, PSP, it was pretty similar to the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions, just didn't look as nice. But it's always really interesting to play those more modern games made for the 7th generation on the PS2, because, as you can see, there's a lot of them. Mostly kids games. I saw so many kids games that released on Wii, PS2, maybe a DS version, but not much after that. This generation almost felt like the beginning of the end for the somewhat quality licensed kids game. And I really mean somewhat. I mean, I'm seeing here we got Looney Tunes Acme Arsenal. That's not even somewhat, that's just bad, but still. There's more work put into that game than most of like the licensed kids games you see nowadays, where it's just like, it truly does feel like they all gave up. Back then, it at least kind of felt like they were trying. They were at least trying. They had voiceovers, they tried to follow the stories, all that stuff. It felt more like an extension of their universes or shows, movies, whatever it is. You know, I think they at least tried a little more back then. And they are trying more these days, but, you know, I'm just seeing like, what? Now, thankfully, this whole trend went the other way, too, where PS2 games would come to the Wii, most notably, Okami. I think a lot of people forget this was a PS2 game originally. It was just so damn ingrained into a Wii user's head as a Wii game. Mainly because one of the main mechanics has to do with, you know, painting a brush on screen. So it's just like, why? Just strange that it released on the PS2 when it did, when only like a year or two later the Wii was a thing. You know, if only they waited a bit. You know, sometimes the developer has to put out a game when they have to put out a game. They can't just be like, oh, let's just put this on the shelf for a year or two until the Wii comes out. That's when we'll make the game. It's just like they have to put out the game when they put out the game sometimes. So this was great. This made sense. I couldn't imagine this game on 360 and PS3 at the time. You know, Okami HD did eventually happen, but, you know, like, this just made perfect sense on the Wii. It was a match made in heaven. But this kind of stuff was few and far between. Most of the time, you can tell this was just kind of done because they just kind of wanted to develop a game cheaper than develop a game for HD consoles and the Wii as well. I mean, like, Metal Slug Anthology, is there any reason why this is only on Wii and PS2 and not 360 and PS3? Like, why? And what the f*** is this? But this initiative made the PS2 last far longer. Pretty much because I think a lot of developers were making games for the Wii and they were just like, well, we might as well make this multi-platform, but we don't want to make this in HD. You know, let's just save some money and let's just port the game to PS2. We don't have to do much. We just have to figure out how this game would work without Wii remote controls. Without the Wii, I feel like the PS2 would have died so much sooner. But with it, it consistently got multi-platform game releases and more support throughout the PS3's life. And one of its last games was FIFA 14, a PS4 launch title. And I just think it's really interesting to look back at nowadays because so many games that I just look at as like, this is a Wii game. And then I see it on PS2 and I might buy it and I just see that in my collection, just that label, that logo for Boogie on my PS2 shelf. It's just, it makes me feel weird. But you know what? It allowed other people to experience games. In many cases, a lot of people didn't like the Wii. You know, they didn't like all the motion control mumbo jumbo. So having a PS2 version did allow those players to play with a standard controller. It would have been nice if they, you know, allowed the Wii version of the game to support like stuff like the Wii Classic controller. Sometimes they just didn't do that, and instead, if you just wanted a regular controller, you had to buy the PS2 version, but okay. Well, like I said, it allowed other people to experience a game. And really, what could be so bad about that? Ah, son of a bitch.